station to be stationed there for the entire period, when you know that there are only 7 people in that village. Therefore, such places are served by what we call mobile teams. Okay? So we have a total of 2,831 mobile stations, and they will be serviced by a total of 867 mobile teams that will be hopping around during the day of the 27th of November. I hope we are clear on that. I am moving on. Now, another important feature of our electoral process, and to the extent of the research that I have done, Namibia is probably the only country in the world where a voter is allowed to go and vote anywhere on the day of elections. I want to tell you that it sounds nice from the perspective of a voter, because you just get in your car and you drive to some village, someplace far away, you cast your vote, and you go back to your business. But I want to tell you that it presents a logistical nightmare to the Electoral Commission. Because in other jurisdictions, in other countries, you have voting districts, for example, let's take Zimbabwe, for example, where you know that in a particular district, there are 7,500 registered voters, and when I prepare my logistics, I'll prepare my logistics to be able to respond to 7,500 voters. That's it. It is not the case in Namibia, unfortunately. These are some of the headaches that some of us have to deal with every day. In Namibia, and we have had bad experiences, but it is what the law says, okay? I want to give you the example of New Dam. New Dam is part of Windhoek Rural Constituency, right, sir? Mm-hmm. Windhoek Rural Constituency. Now, back in 2014, and even in previous elections, you find Windhoekers, they would wake up very early on the 27th of November. And then they will check through the polling station's timetable, that insert, and then they say, okay, let's see, which are the nearest villages, small farms, just outside Windhoek. They would then drive to those places. Let's take New Dam. So in the New Dam area, we would determine, for example, a mobile team. This team is expected, based on our calculations, because of the number of people in that area, in that vicinity, to be there just for 2 hours. Let's say from 7, okay, typically let's say from 7 to 10. At 10 o'clock, they must pack up and drive for 1 hour so that at 11, they start at the next point. Okay? From 11 o'clock, they should, let's say by 1, they should pack up so that at 2, they are at the next point. And then from 4, they pack up to go to the point that they should be serving as their last mobile station before the close of the polls. So now, if you have Windhoekers driving to New Dam and queue up, park their cars, queue up, and start voting at a polling station that is meant to operate just for 2 or 3 hours. They would be there, they will be calling the other, no, just come guys, just come, this one is nice and let's do this thing. So at 10 o'clock, the poor presiding officer is panicking. Okay? He's panicking because they know that it should take them at least 50 minutes to drive to their next point. Sometimes it's gravel roads and all kinds of other things. But the Windhoekers are calling one another, no, just come, it's fine here. The operating principle when you run elections is you don't leave voters unattended. That is now the dilemma of the poor presiding officer. These people are coming, they are flocking to that. It's now 11 o'clock. The other voters are waiting at the next mobile station in terms of the timetable. The presiding officer is sweating and calling Muyoro here in Windhoek. I can't do much about it. So it is a nice principle, but it has got bad unintended consequences. This thing of Namibia becoming one constituency. And then it has a domino effect. And this thing happened in 2014 around the New Dam area, but also in regions like Ohangwena, I remember very well, regions like Omusati and parts of Oshikoto, where people were waiting at the last mobile station that was determined in terms of the timetable. They waited because the polls closed at 9 and they are not seeing any team coming. It's 12 o'clock, it's after midnight, nothing. because these poor people are still serving those people who went to those polling stations. So we have had bad experiences. Perhaps going forward, this is a matter that all stakeholders should look into. Some parties, when you mention to them that let's confine voters to their constituencies, it doesn't sit well with some parties. Maybe they feel that in terms of, I think we have a nomadic population, and some parties want their people to be moving around and roaming around. But it presents some challenges to the electoral committee. So please, on the 27th of November, as a journalist, when you see this kind of situation, don't put the blame entirely and squarely on the ECN. Understand these dynamics within that context. I'm just saying to you, but we have prepared ourselves accordingly, and we will be on the lookout for those polling stations so that we can have teams on standby to be able to respond to those type of scenarios if and when they do occur. I want to mention to you that when you come to our polling stations, we have a form that is called Elect 27A. It's a very important form. Why? Because it keeps a record of all the people, all the voters who passes through a particular polling station. Why is that record important? It is important for reconciliation purposes. Because if you say that 100 people voted at this polling station, but when you look at the votes that are announced in total, cast to all the candidates or parties, if they are more than 100, surely something should not be tallied. I just wanted to illustrate this point by bringing into the picture the incident that occurred in Oshakati East constituency, where we have had a situation of a voter who had voted twice. I don't want to dwell too much on that, but I just want to illustrate the point that our system is robust. That is why we were able, after reconciliation, to detect and to confirm that indeed somebody had voted twice at that point in the Oshakati East constituency by-election. Because you know what happened? What we did, basically, we queried the EVM, because at any point in time, you can query the EVM to tell you how many people have voted at any point in time during the course of the day. And we were able to compare the number on the EVMs at that point with the registered Elect 27. So it is important for that purpose. Let me give you another form. It is called Elect 23A. You will find this form at all our polling stations. Why is it important? It is important because, as I indicated, Namibia becomes one constituency, unfortunately for the ECN, but that is a reality. Now, I want to tell you that when you look at the design of our electoral process, it is therefore possible that you may have a situation where the total number of votes cast in a particular constituency, will be more than the number of registered voters. Are we together on that one? I'm saying because of the design of our electoral process, you will find an instance where the total number of votes cast in a particular constituency could be more than the number of registered voters. It may not make a lot of sense if a person does not understand our electoral system. I'll give you constituencies like the dates farms in the south. What is the Oranjemund constituency? Oranjemund constituency, where you have the date farms, dates farms, where you have seasonal workers. Let's say, just trying to illustrate the point, where, let's say on the 20th of November, those seasonal workers, let's say if they travel there, from wherever they come from in Namibia, and they happen to be there on the 27th, they will be allowed to cast their votes there. But surely, I know that because they are not registered voters from that constituency, that could have a significant impact in terms of the number of voters passing through the polling stations determined in that area. So that is one good example where you may have more people more votes being cast in a particular constituency compared to the number of registered voters. Now, in the 23A form is important because as the ECN we can explain to Namibia, because we keep a record of every person who's coming to cast their vote in the constituency where they are not registered as voters. So we can explain these occurrences. That is the importance of that. I am moving on. Colleagues, a lot of things have been said about our results management process. And I want to take an opportunity to just take you through this process, because it sounds a bit confusing if you are not inside the electoral system, but it is really not confusing. It is just simple and straightforward, in my view. Let me start by saying that in terms of our electoral process, votes are counted and announced at polling stations, period, okay? They are not counted anywhere else in our system. Votes are cast and announced. Let me put it this way. Votes are cast, counted, and announced at polling stations and nowhere else. That is why, technically speaking, I could take the risk of saying that our election process actually just ends right there at the polling station level. Because the other layers and the other levels is basically tabulation, consolidation, aggregation, and announcement. Technically speaking, our electoral process ends at the polling station. Okay? Now, we are saying that each presiding officer tallies the results at the polling station and announces the results there at the polling stations after the close of polls. In terms of our system, the presiding officer is required, is compelled by the law, by the Electoral Act, once they have announced the polling station result, to paste it in a visible way outside at the polling station. It's a requirement of the law. Once they do that, they are expected to take a copy of the result that they would have pasted outside at the polling station to the collation center, where the returning officer will be expecting all the presiding officers from within their respective constituencies. The presiding officers are required not only to give the tally of the printout generated and printed at the polling station, but actually to also give the machines, the EVMs, importantly the control unit of the EVM, because that is the heart of the EVM, that is where the data is kept. Why are they required to do that? So that the returning officer can take all the control units from all the polling stations within their constituency and tabulate them. Tabulation in this case means hooking all of them to what we call a tabulator, and then execute a number of functions so that you are able to collate the results generated by control units from all the polling stations. And by so doing, the returning officer is able to produce a result for a particular constituency. I've indicated that the coming process, we are running 2 elections at the same time, simultaneously, but logistically and in terms of the setup in polling stations and the logistics thereof, they are 2 different elections. Therefore, the presiding officers will be taking 2 results from their polling stations to the returning officer at the collation center. Therefore, the returning officer at the collation center, at the end of the day, after completing the tabulation process, they must produce 2 separate different results. One result, which is a collation and a consolidation of all the votes cast at all the polling stations for the presidential elections, and a similar result, all the votes cast for the various political parties for the National Assembly elections. What then happens is that the returning officer must send these results to the ECN here. That is what happened in terms of that process. And I want to mention here, colleagues, that you see, we know that I have mentioned earlier that the number of polling stations. I have mentioned the number of polling stations that we are activating throughout the whole country. And I want to say that we are mindful of the realities of our political parties in terms of their budgets and other things. I don't think all our parties have the same capacities, and I think you would agree with me. We therefore do not expect that all political parties will have the means to be able to deploy a party agent at each and every polling station. I don't think it is possible. Maybe some parties can do that, I don't know. But we say that at least all the parties, all the 15 political parties, and all the candidates contesting the forthcoming elections, I really believe that at least they should be able to designate a party agent to at least be at the collation center. Because we only have 121 collation centers. It should not be impossible for any of our contesting parties or candidates to be able to assign one person per constituency and give them instructions. Go to the collation center, listen carefully to the announcement that is to be made by the returning officer, and share with us those results. We want to check what the ECM will be announcing at the SEC, at the Central Election Results Center. I read newspapers about what political parties are saying. We respect those statements. But we also say that let's carefully look at our process. Let's analyze the process. Because, as I said, the voting process starts and ends at the polling station. The other levels are just aggregating, tabulation, consolidating, and what have you. So we will be encouraging our parties to at least have a person at the collation center. Then you don't even have to have a fight with Muyoro. You want to be within the results center here in Windhoek. Because in terms of space and other things, it may not be practical. But we have made a commitment to our political parties that we will be giving them a demonstration, a practical walkthrough of the results trajectory, how results are processed and managed from the polling station all the way until the final announcements of the results are made at the Central Election Results Center. It's a straightforward process in my view because I know it quite well. Now, this is basically what I tried to explain earlier. You have the polling station level where the results from each voting station are announced immediately at the close of polls, and the results are posted outside at the polling station. I indicated to you that we have what we call collation centers. The tabulated results of each constituency or total votes cast in a constituency are announced in a prescribed manner by our returning officers. And then lastly, you have the national level, where the results from all 121 constituencies are submitted for verification at the Central Election Results Center. So really that is the process about managing our results. I want to also mention to you that we are deploying technology so that it can help us to enhance our process in terms of packaging the results, but also transmitting the results from the collation centers to here. Therefore, we will be having one module which will be placed at the collation centers. All it would do really is it's a system that we're deploying there so that we are able to capture all the results from all the polling stations, input them into the system. You have different people performing different roles until they are then released to the Central Election Results Center here in Windhoek. We will be, as soon as our results are processed and finalized, we will be releasing the results on our websites. We are busy finalizing the development of an app that can be downloadable on your smartphones, and we'll be announcing all of these developments accordingly. Now, once the results arrives here in Windhoek at the Electoral Commission, the Chief Electoral Officer must then establish the number of votes recorded for each candidate and must communicate such results to the Commission. The Commission will determine the candidate to be duly declared as president. Similarly, the Chief Electoral Officer must determine in a preliminary way, in a manner provided for in Schedule 4 of the Nigerian Constitution, the number of candidates for each political party to be declared duly elected as members of the National Assembly. Lastly, the Chief Electoral Officer must then communicate the result to the Commission to be announced in a prescribed manner. So in a nutshell, that is really the trajectory that the results follows from the polling stations to the Central Election Results Center here in Windhoek. You can ask questions after my presentation. Now, we are saying that the political parties have a role to play. I hear a lot of statements that the Electoral Commission somehow is not keen on having political parties as part of all material stages of the electoral process. I think that is the word that has been used. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to guarantee that it is not entirely correct. All elections that I have been part of, political parties are invited to designate party agents at all polling stations. But as I have indicated, not all parties, perhaps because of capacity and other things, are able to do that. All political parties are also invited and informed about the location of the collation centers. They are encouraged and invited to have people at the collation centers, to be able to monitor the process, to be able to make sure that the returning officer is really announcing the collected results of all the polling stations within the institution. Similarly, the same will apply. Our parties will be invited to have party agents at all our polling stations. They will be invited to have people at our collation centers, and they will also be invited to be at the Central Election Results Center. In fact, they have written to us and we have committed in writing. They can hold us to that. In fact, next week we are inviting political parties so that we can take them through the systems that will be deployed at the collation center. We'll explain to them, this is what happens at the collation center, this is what will be happening here in Windhoek at the SAC. Please familiarize yourself with this process, the systems, and so forth. Now, I want to mention to you that in other democracies, like Nigeria, Ghana, I think even some other countries, there's something that they call parallel vote tabulation. You have political parties that run their own parallel result centers. All that they do there is just a means of verifying that what the Electoral Commission will ultimately announce tallies with what they have observed and noted down from polling stations. So we encourage our parties also to try and have some parallel vote tabulation centers. And I don't think, in the age of WhatsApp and all these technologies, I don't think it's an impossible thing. I think I can even set it up myself. Organize guys at all the collation centers, and I'm at the head office in Windhoek observing what the commission is announcing. I'll tell them, please, just input your data, send it to me. I'm just comparing notes. It's not an impossible thing to do, and we'll be encouraging our parties to be able to do that. Another important aspect of our preparations is observer accreditation. I just want to inform you that we are currently dealing with a number of organizations and bodies who want to come and be part of our election process, our election experience, and I can run you through a number of them. Some of them have already been processed. We're just waiting to accredit them once they arrive in the country. We have the African Union, we have SADC, we have SADC-PF, the Commonwealth, the EU delegation, the British and Australian High Commission, we have elected AISA, Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, Hans Segal Foundation, Friedrich Ebert Stiftung. Those are some of the organizations that we are accrediting to be part of our election experience, to observe our electoral process, and at the end of the process, to hear from them how they view our process, how they would have assessed our performance as the Electoral Commission. Let me also just, by the way, inform you that it has complicated our lives, but we are running simultaneously 5 by-elections. I think the history of why we are running these by-elections is known to everybody. It relates to what transpired from the relevant provisions of the laws in relation to the nomination process. But I just want to tell you that we are running by-elections in Oshikuku, Walvis Bay Urban, Keetmanshoop Urban, and Adar for Barbados. The important dates, some of them, we are running all these processes simultaneously in all those 5 localities. We have already completed the supplementary registration in these 5 localities from the 1st to the 2nd of November. I want to inform you that for obvious reasons, the turnout was quite poor. Why? Because, and we were not surprised, because a good majority of voters were already registered just a few months ago in July. For that reason, we did not expect a lot of numbers in terms of the people that will come to be registered as voters during on the 1st and the 2nd of November. Secondly, another important activity in terms of these by-elections is the nomination period. In terms of the schedule, the nomination starts on the 21st of November and it closes on the 6th of December. That's the nomination period for those 5 by-elections. It sounds a bit messy and confusing, but that is what happens when you are forced to run elections simultaneously, because there are a lot of overlaps and a lot of confusion. And I'll try to explain one of the confusions that we have noted. But for your information, the election day for these 5 by-elections was determined to be on the 15th of January 2020. The law says if a vacancy occurs in a particular constituency, the Electoral Commission has only 90 days within which to conduct a by-election. That is why we were forced to start running that process already, in as much as we are focusing on the national election schedule. So I think we are on course. We will try to keep the nation at rest in the midst of all this confusion. Now let me mention to you one thing that relates to, I have seen a video, it was on social media, one lady was talking a lot of things. Let me explain that situation. You know, when you register voters, you register voters for a particular election that you are preparing for. And when you conduct a supplementary registration of voters process, it has a beginning and an end. There's a cutoff date. Let's take the national supplementary. It started on the 8th of July. It completed on the 27th of July. Okay? And we had to run the provisional voters register through a number of integrity processes. So a person who turned 18 years after the 27th of July, okay, there is no way they could be registered and participate in the forthcoming national elections, because the registration process started and ended at the time when they were not 18 years yet. So let me bring you to this particular case. As I said, in these 5 constituencies, there are a number of people, I believe it's possible, who went to register because they turned 18 years before the 1st of November. So now they were registered for the first time as voters on the 1st of November. They appeared nowhere on the National Voters Register. And by the way, the National Voters Register has already been sealed for that matter. So in the forthcoming elections, you would have situations, especially in these 5 constituencies, where some people would have been registered on the 1st and the 2nd of November, who will be having voters' cards in their hands. But they cannot participate in the elections of the 27th of November. Why? Because they will not be appearing on that voters' register. And by the way, when you carefully analyze the details on your voters' cards, the voter registration number tells a story in terms of when you were registered. So we have enough safeguards to make sure that people who were registered on the 1st and the 2nd of November would not be able to vote on the 27th, because they can only vote on the 15th of January, because those are the elections that they registered for, and obviously during all other subsequent elections going forward. So I just wanted to explain that to you. One of the complexities that arise when you have to run multiple electoral processes. where there are overlaps. I'm moving towards the end of my presentation. I know you have a lot of questions. We are also planning to accredit our reporters for the forthcoming election process. Basically, and if I'm wrong, Vicky can correct me, but all it would take to accredit, especially our local media personnel, is a valid media card. I believe those cards are issued by MICT. Am I correct?
Yes.
And then you will be issued with a form that is called electoral form. So with that form, you can visit any polling station on the 27th of November. Because without that form, with the media card alone, the presiding officer will not allow you. Correct, Vicky? The presiding officer will not allow you. So you need to have that form. So that is part of the accreditation process. I don't think we are putting a lot of obstacles. I think it's really a simple, straightforward process. But of course, when it comes to accrediting foreign journalists, I think there's another process altogether. Maybe foreign affairs and other, the MICT and ministry and so forth. But also, in terms of access to the CERC here in Windhoek, we would require the valid media card. But then I think you need to take a photograph so that you get a special permit or either to receive the electoral form that will enable you to access the Central Election Results Center. My colleague Vicky will be dealing with that. So if my explanation is not exactly clear, please, you feel free to talk to her. Now, let me talk about electoral technologies in our electoral processes. I want to start by saying that because I have been around for a few years, I have some background in terms of why some technologies were introduced in our processes. The first one is this device. It's called a voter verification device. What does it do? Simple. What it does, we load the entire voters register of the 1.3 million registered voters on that device. As I said earlier, Namibia becomes one constituency, unfortunately, for the ECM during the forthcoming elections. So when you come to cast your vote, with this device, we are able to verify and authenticate our voters at all our polling stations. When you come there, you present your voter card. When you look at your voter card, and I hope you have your voter cards here, it has got a barcode underneath, a barcode area. So this device is meant to scan the barcode area. The barcode area contains information. It's not just some funny colors there. It contains information. So what we do, when you present your card, we scan your card, and we retrieve your profile and all your data on that device, as you can see from that illustration. And by doing that, we can actually authenticate that you are the person to whom the card that you are carrying was issued. It would have biometrics capability. If we are doubtful, we will take your fingerprint instantly, and we can actually do a biometrics match of the person carrying the voter card, because it's a biometrics system of voters registration that utilizes an AFES capability. Let's talk about the nice one, the EVS. Let me not say a lot of things about this one, but I would love to answer some questions after my presentation about the EVMs. But I also just really want to state here again that the EVMs were introduced for a reason. And I genuinely believe that the intentions were good. I keep saying this all the time when I engage with some of you. The intentions were good. I don't doubt anything about the EVMs, okay? Because we had situations in our past elections where we had difficulty counting small pieces of paper late at night until early morning hours. People get tired, people get fatigued, people are miscounting things. There are 12 ballots, there are rejected ballots, all kinds of things. I genuinely believe that the EVMs have given us a unique capability especially when it comes to the counting of votes at the close of polls and the announcements of the results at the polling stations. And that is the one area where we had the greatest challenges in terms of our ability to manage our process. It has eliminated human errors and what have you, but we can talk about that. Let me spend a moment to talk about the VVPAT and the concept of a paper trail. Hopefully for one last time before we go to Christmas. Okay? Colleagues, our political parties, our stakeholders, there's been a lot of talk about the VVPAT. I want to explain to you what it is. The VVPAT is the device that you see there in the middle. Technically, it is connected between the control unit and the ballot unit. But in terms of where it is placed within the polling station, it is placed just below the ballot unit in the ballot booth. In other words, when you get behind the ballot booth, where you are expected to cast your vote in secrecy, obviously, is where you find the VVPAT device. The VVPAT stands for Voter Verified Paper Audit Trail, VVPAT in short. Okay? So what it does, as the name denotes, voter verified, what it does is that at the point of casting your vote as a voter, you have the ability to confirm your vote physically. Why? How? Because once you do your selection, either for your party or your candidate, and you confirm your vote, at the button, at the red, I'm just using a different EVM model for illustration purposes. But in our case, our EVM has got a register button right at the bottom, the red button. So you do your selection and you register your vote. Once you register your vote, the VVPAT device that you see in the middle there will print a slip. This slip is visible through a glass opening. It stays there for 7 seconds, and then it cuts. It falls into like a ballot box that you can see right at the bottom. So that is the VVPAT concept, Voter Verified Paper Audit Trail. What is our general view as the Electoral Commission about the VVPAT? We want it. We like it. Why? Because it makes sense, it enhances transparency and openness, and it gives peace of mind to the voter. Because you have a physical verification of your vote through the printed receipt that it produces at the end of the voting process. But we have told our stakeholders, the Namibian nation, that based on what we have seen, the VVPATs are manufactured in India. We are saying that based on the prototype that we have seen, we were not happy with the errors and the mistakes that we observed. We said that we must behave like a responsible election management body. And with the errors and problems that we have seen, with the versions that we have seen, it would be irresponsible for us to roll out that technology in our electoral process. What are some of these errors I'm talking about here? We have seen instances where when the voter makes their selection, the VVPAT device would not communicate to the EVM because this is technology. When you deploy technology, these kinds of glitches are bound to happen. It would simply not communicate to the EVM. We have seen instances from what we have seen where when the voter pressed the button, the relevant button, and cast their vote, the VVPAT device, a paper jam occurs. Any technology that utilizes a printing mechanism is prone to a paper jam. The printer in your office, on your desk, how many paper jams have you gone through? Quite a number. When you look at the conditions under which we run our elections, under trees and what have you, which are more or less similar to India in some respects, these things are bound to happen. We have seen instances where the voter will cast their vote, no problem. The VVPAT prints, and for one or the other reason, this voter just decide to cause some drama to say that no, the slip that was printed is not the button that I pressed. How will the Electoral Commission or anybody for that matter verify that? By that time, the slip would already be amongst the other slips in that ballot booth, in a ballot box at the bottom there. So there are issues. Now, in terms of the paper jams, if that occurs, because a paper jam in your office, on your desk, and a paper jam at a polling station of this nature, I think it presents a different dilemma in relation to protecting the secrecy of the vote. You have a paper jam, the presiding officer must come, the party agent must come. Oh, this guy, he tried to vote for this candidate. These sort of things. So we have carefully analyzed and understood some of these things that we've seen. We've asked ourselves, even the margin of error. When you take India, the case of India, India has got a voting population of more than 500 million voters. If 10,000 VVPATs malfunctions, it's just a drop in the ocean in the Indian experience. If a similar number of VVPATs happens here in Namibia, what could be some of the repercussions in terms of the integrity of our process? So, colleagues, there are things that we have taken into account, and based on what we have seen, we've tried to be responsible. We've said that no, it is perhaps not a good thing to do, in as much as we like it, in as much as it is being demanded for. It's probably not the right time to roll out this technology. Let's monitor the situation closely. Let's see other versions in India so that we can have all the facts on the table and make a decision going forward. Now, let me talk about paper trail. I have carefully listened to pronouncements and statements in the media, especially by political party leaders. You see, sometimes politicians can say a lot of things. Unfortunately, some of us don't have that luxury to say a lot of things. But clearly, ladies and gentlemen, some of the things that have been said, in my view, stems from a position of lack of knowledge and understanding of the systems. And I understand that because they are technical in nature. People can understand these things differently. But I've been hearing people saying that, no, these EVMs don't have a paper trail. There's no paper trail here. We want the VVPAT. People mixing up these concepts. There's a difference. The VVPAT is what we're talking about here. But I can tell you now, colleagues, that our EVMs in their current format, if the results of a particular EVM are disputed for one or the others, any competent court in this country can order the Electoral Commission to produce a paper trail from that EVM. And these scenarios could happen. I can give you the example of my village, for example, or your village, wherever. If, because we count the votes and we announce polling station results right there, so that everybody that voted there can see and hear. And I know that people somehow know the voting patterns in their villages and all these kinds of things. So for a good reason, you might have people say that, no, I can't believe that the people in this area who voted at this polling station really had voted for that party or that candidate. Let's dispute this result. Let's have a case in the court. The court can command the Electoral Commission, can order the commission, produce a paper trail from this machine here. So in this particular case, we can command the EVMs in its current format to produce a paper trail. This paper trail gives a clear account, okay, of all the votes that were cast, either for the candidate or for the party, depending on the type of election we are running. So that is the kind of paper trail that we can produce. I can tell you also that each electronic voting machine processes a maximum of 2,000 votes. If maximum 2,000 votes voted on a particular EVM, the court orders the Electoral Commission, we can give that print, we can run it, so that people can clearly see the first voter who voted on this machine voted for this party. The second one voted for this candidate, whatever the election we are running. So the EVMs have a paper trail capability. I just want to state this on the record. Okay, let me move to the close. I earlier talked about the results management system. Once we declare the results, once they are processed, you are likely to see this kind of interface on your desktop, where you have an interactive interface. You click on a particular region, a constituency pops up, and you are able to see how people voted in a particular constituency for the presidential or for the National Assembly elections. We are color coding the various regions, and there will be some drop down, whatever menus and so forth. But similarly, we will also be having a mobile app that you can download from your smartphone, so that you are able to, and as soon as it's ready, I think we will announce, but please rest assured that it will be ready for our elections, so that you are able to. Let me just talk briefly about the code of conduct. We have invited our political parties, and I want to say these things, because sometimes you people give more attention to our politicians than to the Electoral Commission. It is my belief that it was a good thing for the Electoral Commission to invite our parties to come and sign the code of conduct for political parties. Why is it a good thing? Because the code of conduct is a set of rules. We are approaching a campaign period. A lot of things will be said. Things will be happening, fights over trees and all kinds of things. Is it not a good thing that the Electoral Commission, with an intention of cultivating harmonious relations amongst political parties, is it not a good thing to have a ceremonial event? I mean, it's not a legal obligation for parties to sign this thing. But I think it was a goodwill gesture on the part of the Electoral Commission. Have them in the same room, have them sign these things. The parties said, this code of conduct that we are being requested to sign, we have not seen it. That's what they said. You were there, most of you. Is that true? It's not true. Why am I saying it's not true? Because the code of conduct for political parties was gazetted on the 17th of October, 1992. Just 2 years after our independence. How can parties say that they don't know the content of the code of conduct? I think it was unfair. They hijacked the platform. It was turned into a campaign platform, but perhaps that is the vibrancy of our democracy. But I think what they did was not a good thing. And what they said was not true, that they have not seen. So, and the ECN is calling them to sign something that they have not seen. That's not true. What we were asking them to sign was just a redesigned poster, an enlarged poster. But it is, the content is exactly those 16 rules that you find gazetted in the original gazette. So that is what happened, but we have to serve our political parties. Without parties, there will be no reason for our existence. So we have said to them, after that event, please receive the original gazette of the Code of Conduct. Here it is, including the poster, and we remain open. If anybody wants to come and sign, it's open at our head office. Please just come and sign it. I think it's a good thing to do. And the reason why we've invited the Namibian police is because who secures law and order is the Namibian police. Therefore, it was a good thing to have the IG say a few things in the context of the Code of Conduct. But the parties had other plans for that day. We have written to them. The parties also said that the Electoral Commission has not made a commitment in writing that we will make space available for them at the Results Center here in Windhoek. I have personally written to them. Please, we are making a written commitment to you that you will be on the table with us. And next week, we will set a date where we invite our parties so that we can give them a walkthrough in terms of the results management system so that they can see what happens at the Collation Center and what happens here in Windhoek. That is going to happen. So, colleagues, I think that is what I had to share with you. about which I view to be some technical aspects of our process, because when I read some of the stories, some of the articles, there is a bit of inaccuracy in some of the things that are being written about. And I have picked on these issues because I feel that for a person who is on the outside, it is reasonable that people may not be able to understand some of the intricacies of our processes. I just want to share with you that we are currently facing some challenges. Transport is one, but we are dealing with that. We will use privately owned vehicles. In terms of our transport logistics, this approach has served us quite well. In 2014, during the July supplementary registration, and we believe that it will serve us well going forward. We recognize the fact that other ministries have their own programs. They don't maintain a fleet of vehicles to wait for the ECN after 5 years when the ECN will be running elections. So we respect that, and I think that is fine. We will be sorting that out. In 2014, we did have challenges in terms of the transmission of election results from collation centers to here. I think that experience was partly because of, I think, the network coverage of the MTC. We have engaged with the MTC. They have given us assurances that for the coming process, we should be able to have a better experience in terms of transmitting election results through some secure networks and what have you from the collation centers to here. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention. Please, I am ready to entertain whatever questions you may have. Please, let's just be mindful that it's now 9 o'clock. Maybe in 30 minutes, I can please respond to some questions you may have. Thank you very much. Do you want the roving mic? Yeah, please live stream. Please live stream. I expected a round of applause. It's not a standing ovation. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Muyoro.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, colleagues. My name is Agius from the Nairobi newspaper. Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question about the issue of the VVPAT or the verifiable audit paper.
Voter verified paper audit trail.
Yeah. You said that the device in the middle is capable of printing the verifiable paper trail. But you said that the challenges or the issues that you have experienced, one of the issues is that a voter will cast their vote and then the machine will display a receipt.
Yes.
But the voter will question that receipt.
Yes.
Say that, no, this is not the candidate or the party that I voted for. Isn't that reason enough for us to doubt the whole system?
I don't think it should be reason enough for us to doubt the system, because a voter who does that, I think does that maliciously, either to discredit the process or to just cast aspersions on the technology. Because the incident that I'm referring to here is not something that we have actually seen, but we were informed that there were such incidents where people will just cast their vote, the machine will print, and then they will just go haywire to say that no, the script that was printed is not my party or my candidate. But I don't think that is good enough reason.
But who do we trust here? Is it the machines or the voter?
Or the voter? I think that is a question for all of us, in all fairness. I think that is a question for all of us.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Muyoro. My name is Stephen from Commerce and Industry Review Magazine. If I got you correctly, you said that each EVM has the capability of processing up to 2,000 votes.
Yes, maximum.
Maximum. What happens if people vote, if there are more than 2,000 people come to use it, then what happens?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you joined us a little bit late. I have shared with, please do take copies of our polling timetable. We have all our polling stations there. We have said that we will be deploying our EVMs to our polling stations, and for each polling station, there will be a backup EVM. Let me also mention something that I did not mention. The part of what we are doing right now with our parties is to make sure that political parties will receive and are part of the process. They will know which EVM of what serial number in how many quantities are going to which constituencies. We are doing this, okay? Because the EVMs are actually carried in blue carry cases. Those cases have got a handle, and we invite political parties to put their clips, the seals, what do you call those things?
Seals.
The seals. These seals have their serial numbers. The reason for that is simple, so that our parties can be able to call their agents at the destination where these machines are being sent to, just to compare notes that our serial numbers that we have fixed on those carry cases are these numbers. Can you please tell me whether is what you have received on the other side? Please also tell me, as my party agent, how many EVMs in total were booked in at the polling station in Chiwarongo or in Katima Mulilo, whatever the case may be. So that the parties have these numbers and they can compare notes and they can do their own verifications and their own reconciliations. We keep saying that our system have got sufficient administrative safeguards, and we just going to tighten them even further, given some of the developments that has occurred.
The 2,000. What happens?
Okay, what happens if more than 2,000 people come at a particular polling station? That is what I'm trying to say, that we have backup EVMs. Once votes are cast on a particular EVM, it is full. We simply seal it, it's set aside. We deploy the backup EVM, the voting continues.
How do we know that the certain EVM has reached the maximum votes of 2,000?
No, the EVMs at any given point in time, you can query it. How many people have voted so far on me? You can query it at any given point in time.
Yeah, but how do you determine? Because how do the voters determine, or let's say observers determine whether this EVM has reached
maximum?
Yeah.
Okay, our process is monitored by our party agents. So I don't know about observers or outsiders, but our party agents are there. And I think surely if a particular EVM is full, maximum of 2,000 votes, the presiding officer is going to announce that, "Hey, senior colleagues, please come and see for yourself. It's now max." So for that reason, let's all observe that I'm now shutting this down. That's not the correct word, but we are setting it aside and we are deploying this second one in the process so that we're able to continue with the polling process. But let me give you an interesting fact. Since the year 2014, when we started to use these EVMs, and I was actually surprised when my operations colleagues revealed this to me. Apparently, you don't get a polling station in Namibia, it has not happened, where 2,000 people will vote to a point where this machine has reached capacity and you need to deploy. It has not happened. It was a very interesting detail to me, which I discovered just recently. It has not happened. Maximum you will get 1,700, 1,600, that sort of thing. And I think it's a good thing for a logistics perspective in terms of managing the process. Hi, yes.
Yeah, good morning, Brigitte, freelance journalist. Just a comment, I think what my colleague meant, does the machine give off a signal if 2,000 have been reached?
Okay.
Because otherwise some people sleep and then it is a 2003, 2004 voters and nobody notices. So may just a little add on to that.
Does it give a signal, Milton?
Yes, sir.
It does.
Yeah, then
It notifies that the period will be within 5 votes. I think.
Okay, no, thanks a lot.
Okay, so I've got two questions. You spoke about the paper trail, which can be printed out if a court orders it.
Yes.
Now, after all the controversies over the past 10 years with the EVMs, why doesn't the ECN anyway print out a paper trail to satisfy all the political parties without them having
to wait for a court?
To court. I mean, it will stop all these debates. And my second question is, you're speaking now about the collation center and that you sent a letter to the political parties that they can have representatives there, but you didn't speak about the verification center. So what is what now?
Okay. The first one is, why doesn't the Electoral Commission print this paper trail anyway? I think my response to that would be, why don't we use ballot papers alongside the EVMs? Because I think when you introduce a system, it's for a reason. I think you want to have increased efficiency, and I think you want to cut down and expedite the process on other add-ons. I don't think it would make sense to have people voting electronically at a polling station, and at the same time, you also printing a paper trail. I think the question arises, why then don't you just vote manually? Why all this hassle? I think that's my response to that.
But it's one piece of paper.
No. It's not one piece of paper. It's a long trail piece of paper. Milton, you want to add that?
Yes.
2,000 votes.
Yeah, if I could just explain what the paper trail does, it does not have people's names or parties' names.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It simply indicates that, for instance, if it's the party list, candidate 1, candidate 2. So each voter, as it comes through, has a time date stamp. So it says at this time, at this date, voter number 1, doesn't know who you are, voted for candidate number 3. So each one of them, at least having 2-3 lines on a printout, multiplied by 2,000 is 6,000 lines. So for each polling station, the maximum would be 6,000 lines of printout. It would take about 2 hours to do at a polling station. So after the completion, if we had to do that process, it's 2 hours to print, but it still has no verification purpose because everybody has gone home, etc. So we believe that process should be done then in coordination after the fact.
You want to add something?
Yeah. I also just want to add something also. I also remember our act talked about the secrets of the vote as well. For example, if Brigitte, for example, voted at 7 o'clock in the morning, you're the very first one, we will know that Brigitte voted 38. Then what about the secrets as well? That's also some of the small.
It's your name.
No, not name, but if I know, polling station A, at 7 o'clock, Brigitte was the very first vote. When you bring that, we know that the first vote voted candidate A, candidate 1.
Yes.
Candidate 1 is which party, we know, that's what I'm trying to say. That's the one, yeah.
Yes, let me just add something to that. Thank you very much. You know, this whole thing of printing a paper trail, unfortunately, also has the potential of undermining the secrets of the vote. If the court orders that this thing be, and if I was a party agent, and I knew the first, because most people come like 4 o'clock at polling stations. If I know that this Tate or this Meme was the first one here, so let's wait for the court order and see this printout. The first vote went here. So now it is going to be worse if it is now a predetermined part of our logistics. Some people will be sitting there with taking notes, checking, these people, okay, he was number 15th in the queue. Oh, he voted for this. Big problems. You don't want to go there. Catherine?
I have another question.
Oh, the one on...
On the, what is now the collation center? And
Okay.
The parties want access to the verification center, and not the building, but the room where the final verification takes place.
Okay. The secret room. On a lighter note, Brigitte has got some theory of a secret room. It's not there, colleagues. Forget about it. It's not there. But I think it's a pertinent question. Please, what we say is that sometimes in the business of elections, people tend to use terms interchangeably to a point where sometimes they just lose meaning, or they are made to, or they become different set of meanings is attached either for convenience or whatever the case may be. But what we say is that, and I think what the law provides for, obviously, polling stations. The law provides for collation centers. I don't know which section it is, but it is there because I wrote about it just a few days ago. The law provides for collation centers. What the law does not provide for is something called a central election results center. The law makes no mention of something like that. But tell me, from an administrative point of view, if you are asked to manage the elections and you know the results trajectory from the polling station to the collation center.
Where is the collation center?
At the constituency.
Thank you. Okay.
At the
I'm
constituency.
talking about the verification center.
Yes, let me come there. The law talks about the polling station. You came in a bit late, but I will explain it. We have said that results, votes are counted, votes are cast, counted, and announced at polling stations. Party agents are there. Votes are then, the results are taken to the collation center. We have 121 constituencies in this country. There is a collation center for each constituency where the returning officer operates from. It's called the collation center. It is in a law. And by the way, the function of the returning officer is basically to collate, but maybe you can also to consolidate, whatever English word we prefer. But it's called a collation center. So the returning officer has a duty to put together the results from all the polling stations. Once they do that, announce a result for the presidential elections first, and then for National Assembly elections for that constituency. What then happens? The returning officer sends that result to some place we call the Central Election Results Center. It is a name that we have given it because it makes sense. Central Election Results Center. So the returning officer sends this result. In terms of the law, it comes to the Chief Electoral Officer. Now, we are saying that before we get into the confusion of is it verification, what is it called, where is it coming from? Why can't we just agree that there must be a mechanism of ensuring, or political parties must come up with a mechanism of ensuring just one thing, that the Electoral Commission announces a result for a particular constituency, which is exactly what the returning officer announced at the collation center. Why can't we just talk about that? Because we don't verify things here. Of course, let's say when we used to use faxes, somebody sends a fax, it comes through, it is blurred, it's not so clear, the writing you need to, and all these kinds of things. As a way of verifying the authenticity of such a fax, won't you call back? Hey, listen, we have this thing, can you please accept this? Maybe that is how we got lost into that word of verification, this and that. We just, the duty of the Electoral Commission, the CERC, at the Central Election Research Center, is to consolidate. Let me just tell you something. When you look at the way our electoral system is designed, you cannot declare a person duly elected president until you get the last vote from the last constituency. It cannot happen. So a result from a number of constituencies are meaningless until you consolidate all the results, put them together, and give an account at the national level. How many votes in total did all the candidates get? So the duty of the Electoral Commission is to consolidate what would have been announced by all the returning officers to be able to give this national picture for presidential candidates, but also to be able to ascertain how many votes were cast to all the political parties so that we can determine the quota for the allocation of seats in the National Assembly. So all we do here is just consolidating what we would have received from the coalition centers. Nothing else. Verification of what?
Will the political parties be allowed into that consultation?
I have said that 100 times. Yes. Yes, they will be, Brigitte. They will be. And I wrote to them. Yes, Catherine, I will take 3 more questions. My bosses are waiting for me, probably watching me say all these things. Okay?
I'd like to know
yes.
If there is a chance that the ECN can do us all a favor, and that favor would be for the ECN to create a WhatsApp group with all the political parties on it, with all the media organizations, at least in the country on it, with all the observers on it, from where on to where they post the electoral results at each polling station. Then we can all do our own collation, etc. Then I also want to know if the ECN will avail the voters' registration list to all of us, to the media, for
Okay.
us to also verify.
Yeah. Fair question. I don't think it would be prudent, it would be best practice to run election results on social media. WhatsApp things and all kinds of things. Who knows who does what? I don't think that will work. I don't think my commission would even listen to that one, with due respect. It's prudent, but all I'm saying is that I've talked about the concept of parallel vote tabulation. Let the political parties and let journalists form your own networks so that you snap pictures from the results that will be posted at the polling stations, build your own networks online, and share the results and compare notes. I think we will stick to the formal, traditional ways of disseminating the election results. I don't think we want to get into that space. There was another question, Catherine.
Voters register.
Okay, the voters register. What I know is that, and I'm very happy about our voters register. I can brag about that one because nobody dares talk about it. It's watertight. It's watertight. I know the law says we must give to political parties a copy of the final voters register, and I can inform you that yesterday is the day on which, it was the 6th of November, on which we have officially announced in a government gazette the availability of the final voters register. Alongside that, we have invited our parties, please come and collect copies of the final voters register. It is in electronic format. We have shared with the nation the numbers. We have made comparisons in terms of the picture in 2014 and now. We have a very good system, and I'm very proud of this one. So I think maybe it's an administrative question. Can it be shared with the media? Which we already did anyway. I mean, in terms of the statistics, you want the whole thing with the list of names of people. What do you want to do then? Just for out of curiosity. Transparency. Okay. Let me go here first. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Just a question on the individual EVMs again. What are the chances of should there be a power outage at a particular polling station that machine might lose information?
Okay. Let me say this. I'm not really an IT person, but I have listened very carefully when my IT people talk and show me things. The EVM is battery operated. It has got power packs. That's why we're able to use them in the villages. It's not hooked into a power point, let alone it's a standalone system. You cannot connect it to a network. You cannot connect a foreign device to the EVM. The EVM is the most low-tech technology you can get. It is a calculator on your desk in your office, just to add up numbers, nothing else. It doesn't come close to a smartphone, let alone an iPad. It's just a calculator. 1 + 1 is? That's it. That's it. Yes, sir.
Sorry, sir. Thank you so much. My name is Kevin. We covered elections in Zimbabwe in 2014.
Which media house are you?
I'm from Eagle FM.
Yes, please.
Yeah, we were together a few days ago.
Yeah.
So you have people that go to polling stations.
I'm getting confused these days.
Okay, yeah. So
Sorry
they take snapshots of we call them V11 forms in Zimbabwe. You know, the results, and then that's circulated on social media, and they have their own election results center online, and they are collating the results, and Zimbabweans ran into a risk where the people on social media announced the results first before the Electoral Commission.
Okay.
So are you not afraid of running into the same situation? Because what happened in Zimbabwe with despondency that was created because the Electoral Commission was late to pronounce the results. And the social media activists already saying that the opposition party has won, and then people went into the streets.
So that's why the MDC supporters went to the streets
And got killed.
to defend their votes.
Yes.
Yeah, let's not get political and just. Okay, no. For us, we have had a discussion the other day. It was organized by, is it the Internet Society of Namibia?
Yes, sir.
Nashilanga the other day,
Yes, sir. Yes.
where these questions were raised. How are we going to be countering social media?
Yeah.
Really, and I've listened to numerous conversations, even in South Africa, about the impact of this and that. My feeling really is that I don't think, first of all, I personally believe that social media conversations don't reflect the reality outside, on the ground, on the street. What is being said, because it's an unregulated space where anything goes. The vitriol, the bigotry, everything. And I think public officials like some of us are really at the receiving end. But I do watch and read a lot of things. But what is being said there is unregulated, there are no rules, and really it does not reflect the reality on the ground. That is my own personal conviction. But I think in our own case, I also do not, and I want to be careful, I don't think, from what I have seen and what I know about our system, that things could be done on social media that could compromise our electoral process. But I think this would call for the Electoral Commission to do a better job in terms of informing and educating the Namibian public what to listen for and what to view and which channels to rely on. I think if we can do a better job in making people understand that don't watch what is happening on social media. Listen to your good old radio, all our language services. Listen to our online or check our online platforms, the official ones, our website, and the app that I've talked about earlier, and the officially established channels. I'm not seeing opportunities where things that are posted on social media could somehow come and overshadow the officially established channels. I mean, this is just my own view. We will do our part to make sure that something like that would never happen. Let me just give the colleagues some chance. Yeah.
Yes, mine is on Section 77 of the Act. I just wanted to ask, has this particular section of the Act has it been applied before? And why is there so much hostility towards the Act? Is there an issue with the interpretation of the Act? And what is the way forward? I mean, will you advocate for a revision of the Act?
Okay, you're talking about 77 is the one about when people have to resign.
Yeah.
That's the one, eh?
Yeah.
But you see, without saying too many things about that, what I can confirm to you is that what it means, if read in conjunction with Article 46 and 47 of the Namibian Constitution, the practical implications of that, in our understanding, this is what we have said, is that if you are a sitting councillor, local authority, regional council, or you are a remunerated member of the Public Service of Namibia, you do not qualify to be nominated by your party on the party list to contest the National Assembly elections. That's what it says. We have done our homework in terms of ascertaining that our interpretation is indeed correct. That is why today we are sitting in a situation where we are running these by-elections. As much as it may not be a good thing for some of us, because it's additional work for us. Now, in terms of why was it not the case in the past, I do not know. I'm not aware that in 2014, for example, that there were people who were nominated on party lists by their political parties who were sitting councillors or members of the public service or local authority councillors. I'm not aware of that. However, if that happened in the past, clearly it must have been an oversight on the part of the Electoral Commission and on the part of all stakeholders. When it comes to, we are the custodians of the electoral law, but I think implementation creates responsibilities on the part of everybody. So if that fell through the cracks back in 2014, I can just say perhaps it was an oversight. that somebody was not checking this, and somebody was nominated, and they were a nurse or a teacher or whatever the case may be. In terms of the review going forward, I believe that a lot of things in the Electoral Act should be reviewed. Personally, because I administer elections, I am not happy with this provision that any voter can vote anywhere in the country. It doesn't augur well in terms of planning your logistics. You want to base your planning on fixed numbers, where you know in our Rangimun constituency is a maximum of 7,200 people registered as voters. Therefore, it's just X number of teams, X number of machines. I don't have to plan for eventualities. What if more people come then? It's bad for us. But for now, so I'm just trying to make the point that a lot of things in the Act need to be looked at by all stakeholders. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Yes, please. Sorry for. Yeah.
And your challenges with transport logistics, you're going to make use of private vehicles the same like 2014.
Yes, we would do that.
What are you going to do different this time? Because during 2014 it was
a bit of a mess.
It was a total mess. But now you're going to use the same strategy. But what are you going to do different this time?
Okay, different this time. You know, I can tell you that in July, during the supplementary registration, we made use of privately owned vehicles from the Namibian public. What we do is that we work closely with the Namibian traffic authorities.
Yeah, together with government, garage and everybody.
Yes, just to check the roadworthiness of these vehicles. But we usually target double cabs. In terms of how we have administered, I remember there were issues in 2014. The problem is that a lot of members of the public are already and waiting as we speak to give their double cabs to the ECN. Because I think the rate is not that bad that we are determined to pay these individuals. So we know that if we need 100 vehicles in Keermans, in an instant, if you announce today, in the next 2 hours, your building is flooded. So unfortunately, it's a public notification. The demand is high. So people will come. But I think we must tighten our process in terms of making sure that we manage the process better. But if you say, I need 50 vehicles in Oshakati in a particular constituency, unfortunately, you cannot tell people that you can't really control the people bringing their vehicles, unfortunately. It's a bit of a messy process, but I think it allows us to get the best vehicles that we can. And I think we just need to do a better job to really manage the process more effectively and perhaps more transparently. Allow me to close, ladies and gentlemen, by saying that we will do our best as the Electoral Commission. And I think I have gone at great lengths to explain the results trajectory, because a lot of people say a lot of things about our results process. I honestly believe that it is as transparent and as open as it can be. And we will do the best we can to make sure that our parties and the journalists, you also need to be fair, so that sometimes you come to the defense of the ECN to say that no, the ECN has done well here. And so that you also refute some of the things that some of our politicians are saying, you know. But please rest assured, I'm doing my best. My commission is on board. We will do the best we can to make sure that we deliver a credible election process in the interest of our democracy and of our country. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Have a nice day.